Hi, everybody. Welcome back to I Create for You. We're going to read the second to last story that's still in this book of Haunted Pets by Alan Zulo. This story is going to be called The Telltale Bones. After the story, I will sketch the ghost pet featured in that story. For his 10th birthday, Craig Crawford and his father Leonard went camping in a remote area in the lowlands of South Carolina. They drove west from their home in Charleston out into the country until they passed a few ramshackle houses and empty stores that had been part of a once bustling little town. They arrived at a clearing beside a pond nestled in a forest thick with graceful cypress trees and towering oaks. The bays, hollies, and magnolias that surrounded the clearing sweetened the air and added a splash of color. "Man, we're out in the middle of nowhere," said Craig with a whistle as he gazed out at the wilderness. "No one will ever find us out here." Or so he mistakenly thought. "We're going to have a great time," said Leonard, rubbing his son's short hair. "Dad, you're not going to turn this trip into a science lecture because you're a biology professor, are you?" His father laughed. "Why, of course I am, and we'll have fun doing it." Craig let out a mock groan and then broke into a big smile. Actually, he loved the outdoors and shared his father's appreciation for the beauty and wonders of the environment. So, after pitching their tent, father and son went on a brief hike and then ambled over to the pond with their fishing poles, hoping to catch dinner. Pointing up to a cypress tree at a bird with a yellowish crown of plumes, Craig asked, "What's that, Dad?" "That's a yellow-crowned night heron, a rather sinister-looking bird. They catch fish, but in a most unusual way. They grasp them in their bills, toss them in the air, and swallow them head first." "Gee, I thought for sure we'd be alone." "There are hundreds of species of animals out here." "No, Dad, I'm talking about humans. Look over there." He pointed toward the other side of the pond. A lanky man in his early 20s stood motionless under a sweat-stained wide-brimmed floppy hat. He also wore denim overalls, a dirty white shirt, and knee-high boots. Beside him, gripping a bone in his mouth, sat a white and brown coon dog. They were facing Craig and his father. Craig waved at them, but they didn't respond. They remained still. Suddenly, a gust blew across the pond at the Crawfords, and they covered their eyes as leaves and dirt swirled around them. When the wind died down a moment later, they looked across the water. The man and his dog were gone. That night, after Craig and his father grilled their catch of the day, they sat side by side on a log in front of the fire. "Okay," said Leonard, "let's be real quiet and see how many night sounds we can identify." "Quank, quank, quank." "I know. Those are tree frogs, right?" asked Craig. "Very good." "Hoo-hoo, hoo, hoo-hoo, ha." "Barred owl. Correct again, son." "And that," Craig said, slapping his forearm, "was a buzzing mosquito." Craig suddenly noticed that goose pimples covered his arms. The air had become very still, and the night noises had ceased. An uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched slowly crept over Craig. While his dad rambled on about the eating habits of the barred owl, Craig slowly looked behind them. His whole body jerked in surprise, and he let out a yelp. "Craig, what's wrong?" Leonard wheeled around and saw what had startled his son. Standing 10 feet away were the same man and his dog whom they had seen earlier on the other side of the pond. The flickering light from the fire danced across the man's pale, narrow chin, long, slender nose, and high forehead. He had a kindness about him, but his deep-set eyes seemed very weary and sad. His hand rested on the dark brown head of his dog. She had big floppy ears, a cream-colored body with an odd brown marking along her left shoulder, sort of like a leaf. Her thin brown tail wiggled ever so slightly, and clenched between her teeth was a long, shiny white bone. "Didn't mean to startle you none," said the man. We didn't hear you approaching, Leonard remarked. You took us by surprise. Seldom see any campers out here, said the man. Pretty remote. You two father and son? They nodded. That's good. Do you live around here? Craig asked. The man gave a half-hearted laugh. Live here? No. Used to. Don't anymore. Leonard, eyeing the bone in the dog's mouth, asked, Mind if I take a look at that bone? I don't think she's going to give it up to a stranger, said the man. She's a good old hound and minds me. But when it comes to snatching a bone out of her mouth, why, she can be meaner than a poke gator. The look in Leonard's eyes told Craig that his father didn't feel comfortable being with this man. Sir, said Leonard, if you don't mind, we're having a nice father-son talk, and... Oh, of course. Didn't mean to disturb you. Have a pleasant time and enjoy your camping. The man and his dog turned and slipped into the darkness, silently. Hey, Dad, what's up? Craig asked in a hushed tone. You acted like you had a bad feeling about that guy. I can't put my finger on it, Craig, but something bothered me about him. And that dog. I wish I could have gotten a better look at that bone. Why? The frown on Leonard's face quickly changed to one of his typical smiles. Oh, it's nothing. Curiosity. You know me, always waiting to examine bones and things. Now, where were we? Oh, yes, we were listening to night sounds. The day after they returned from their camping trip, Leonard sat down at the dinner table with a startling admission. I didn't want to scare you out there, Craig, but I'm pretty sure the bone that dog was carrying belonged to a human. It was a femur. That's the thigh bone, the one that goes from the hip to the knee. It was clean as a whistle, so I'm assuming that the body the bone came from has been dead for many months or years. Wow, said Craig. I talked to Sheriff Wilson about it. He sent a couple of deputies up to the area to see if they can find that man and his dog. They'd like to know where the bone came from. Do you think it was murder? Not necessarily. It could be that dog dug up an old grave, but the bone didn't look that old. A few days later, the sheriff called and told Leonard that the deputies had no luck finding the man or his dog. The sheriff said, since all we have to go on are your suspicions that the dog was carrying a human bone, and since there are no reports of anyone missing in the area, there's nothing more we can do. Greg and his father soon forgot about the eerie encounter with the man and his dog, that is, until the following year when they returned to the pond for another camping trip on Craig's 11th birthday. Before turning in for the night, how about roasting some marshmallows, Leonard suggested. Great, said Craig. I'll find some good sturdy sticks. With his flashlight, the boy began scouring the ground a few yards from the campsite when he suddenly came upon a pair of boots. A chill slithered up his spine as Craig gazed from the boots to the overalls and finally to the face of the sad-eyed young man he had seen at the pond the previous year. It's you again, Craig stammered. Startled you, huh? Replied the man. Sorry. Then the dog appeared by the man's side. Craig gulped. In her mouth was a long white bone, looking like the same one that his dad suspected was human. I've got to go. Bye, said Craig. He turned around and hurried back to the campfire. Dad, guess what? He said anxiously. I just bumped into... He could tell by his father's expression that the man and his dog were standing behind him. How y'all doing? Hailed the man. Apologize for scaring the young one. Me and my hound were just roaming around and caught a glimpse of your campfire. Sir, said Leonard, I'm quite concerned. The last time we met... It was last year, the man interrupted, on this very date, July 16th. How did you know? Asked Leonard without waiting for an answer. He continued, Your dog was carrying a bone exactly like that one, like the one he's got in your mouth now. I'm a biologist, and I can tell from here that it's a femur, the femur of a human. Where did he get it? The man glanced away and said nothing, appearing to be deep in thought. He took off his hat, revealing a head of thick, curly blonde hair. He put his right foot up on a log, leaned forward, and rested his right forearm on his thigh. That bone has quite a history behind it. Dates all the way back to 1938. Two farmers, Strom Woodward and Mason Hopkins, had a bitter feud going on. They never cared much for each other. Used to duke it out when one of of the annual boxing matches held in the town square every 4th of July. Strom usually won during their teen years, but when they got older, Mason got the better of him and beat him 3 straight times, the last when they were 23. Their rivalry heated up after they both began courting the same girl, Marla Dawson. She was mighty pretty. Long red wavy hair and eyes as green as pine trees. Well, the guys finally demanded that Marla make a choice, Strom or Mason. She thought about it long and hard and declared that her heart belonged to Mason. Well, this threw Strom into a tizzy, and he wanted to get his revenge. So at the next 4th of July boxing match, Strom sneaked iron weights in his gloves and beat up on Mason. Strom knocked him down 3 or 4 times, but Mason kept getting up and battling back. Even though Strom cheated, Mason wound up winning with a right hook to the jaw that knocked him out cold. Afterwards, Strom was spitting mad. He lost the boxing match, his pride, and his girlfriend. After 2 weeks, his anger consumed his rational thoughts. He grabbed his shotgun and hid out in the brush, waiting to ambush Mason. Late one afternoon, Mason and his dog, a big old shepherd hound named Hickory, strolled by. Hickory stopped, sniffed the air, and growled. She smelled trouble, and she knew Strom was in the bushes up to no good. The man's voice faltered. He swallowed hard, cleared his throat, and then continued. Strom pulled the trigger and shot the dog dead. Mason cried out, dropped to his knees, and held his dying dog. And then Strom shot Mason in the head and killed him too. The man's sad eyes flared with anger, and his tone turned to one of disgust. Strom loaded Mason's body and the dead dog onto his truck and drove over to this here pond. He weighed down Mason's body with some rocks, rolled it into the pond, and figured no one would ever find it. Then he buried the dog in a shallow grave. The next day, Strom lied to Marla. He told her that Mason said he had to go away for a while because his grandparents in Cincinnati were ill and needed him to help take care of their farm. Strom thought he got away with murder, but he didn't. That night, when he stepped outside his cabin, he was scared out of his boots. There was Hickory, just howling and a yelping and a growling at him. "Dog," he exclaimed, "you're supposed to be dead. Now get out of here." Strom ran inside, loaded his shotgun, and then flung open the door, but the dog had hightailed it out of there. The next night, when Strom walked us outside to the outhouse, why, there was Hickory again, a barking and a growling because he knew what Strom had done. "I don't believe this," Strom shouted. "Wait till I get you, you mangy mutt. I'll kill you for sure this time." He got his shotgun. This time, he quietly opened the window. The dog was still barking like crazy, so Strom got a bead on her and blasted away. But Hickory was still yapping. Now Strom always had a keen eye. With a rifle, he could shoot $50 out of your hand from 100 paces away. He knew he hadn't missed hitting that dog, especially with a shotgun. But darn if that hound just kept on barking at him. So Strom rushed outside and started chasing Hickory until she just took off and disappeared. This went on every day after sundown. No sooner would Strom step out of his house than that dog would hound him. By now, Strom was beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a real dog. That was what was bugging him. Was a real ghost. Either that or he was going nuts. So Strom decided to leave the area for a while, thought maybe that would give him some peace. He stayed with friends 2 counties over from here, but it didn't do any good. The first night there, Hickory showed up and barked at him. The others heard her too, and they saw her. They tried to catch up on her account of she was keeping them from their sleep too, but she'd just vanished. In Strom's mind, that proved he wasn't plumb crazy. He was dealing with an honest-to-goodness ghost. Since running away didn't help, Strom returned to his cabin, but he couldn't sleep because of the barking and snarling going on all night long. Every night. Strom got so desperate he stuck candle wax in his ears and covered his head with his pillow to drown out the barking. But Hickory's haunting was taking a toll on Strom. He was losing weight, couldn't eat much, and barely got enough sleep to get him through the day. A couple of months went by. Marla was getting mighty worried because She hadn't heard a word from Mason. She knew that something was wrong, or why else wouldn't he have written or called or sent a telegram? Although Strum was still getting tormented by the ghost dog every night, and he was looking poorly, he wouldn't crack. No, sir. He kept on as though nothing had happened. Well, wouldn't you know it, one night Hickory didn't come by his house, and Strum actually got a peaceful sleep. Finally, I outlasted that terror of a hound, he told himself, but he was wrong. Dead wrong. That night Hickory came trotting out into town, carrying a bone in her mouth. She dropped it off in the middle of the town square. No one paid much attention at first, but the next night she does the same thing with another bone. She doesn't bury it or anything, just leaves it there, barks, and then walks off. Someone finally says, "That sure looks like Mason's hound. I wonder if he's back." The third night there was a crowd waiting. Hickory came with a big gold bone in her mouth, and she dropped it on the grass. Someone finally had the smarts to study the 3 bones and announced, "Hey, these aren't no hog bones. They're people bones." Needless to say, the townsfolk were shocked. The dog began barking, and people said, "Let's follow her and see where she's getting these bones." So they grabbed some lanterns and ran after Hickory, and she led him to this here pond. She went to the edge and then stepped right in, went underwater, and came up with another bone. The sheriff and his men pulled out a lot more bones, not all the bones, but quite a few. They even found a skull that had been shattered by a gun. They could tell the bones had belonged to a man in his 20s who stood about 6 foot tall and had once broken his arm. That description fit none other than Mason Hopkins. By then the sheriff had a pretty good idea about who killed Mason, so he decided to pay Strum Woodward a visit, but Hickory beat him to it. Strum was sitting on his front porch strumming his banjo when he caught sight of that pesky hound. She was carrying a bone in her mouth and walked up, pretty as you please, to Strum and dropped it right at his feet. Strum was so flabbergasted he couldn't even move. His mouth dropped open and his banjo fell onto the porch floor. Soon the sheriff drove up and started asking Strum a whole bunch of questions. Strum just mumbled, and then the sheriff spotted the bone and asked, "Where'd you get this?" And Strum said, "I don't know nothing about it. Some old dog dropped it off." Then Hickory began barking out back. So the sheriff went over and saw a hole that had been dug up. And guess what he found in the hole? More bones. The sheriff determined that they were from Mason's body. The hound had taken a few of them out of the pond and buried them in Strum's yard. Well, Strum was so shook up he slumped against the side of his house and began to cry. He was blubbering, and no one could understand a word he said. Finally, they got him to calm down so they could make out what he was saying, and Strum confessed. I did it. I killed Mason Hopkins. I shot him in the head, and I tied rocks to his body and tossed him in the pond. That dog of his, I killed her too. Came back as a ghost and haunted me. She followed me, and I couldn't get her to shut up, and now she's been burying some of Mason's bones in my yard. I can't take it anymore. She's driving me crazy." They sent Strum away to the penitentiary for the rest of his life for murdering Mason. "Wow, what a story!" Craig exclaimed. "So what happened to the ghost dog?" Legend has it Hickory and her master sometimes wander these woods together on the anniversary of their death. The man's eyes grew misty. He took a deep breath and said softly, "Didn't mean to take up so much time. Best be leaving now." He turned around, tapped his dog on the head, and mumbled, "Come on, Hickory, let's go." They walked silently into the night. Craig wasn't sure that he heard right. "Hey, wait a minute. Wait a second," he shouted. "Don't leave." Then, without catching his breath, Craig turned to his father and whispered excitedly, "Dad, did he just call his dog Hickory?" Leonard, who had been in deep thought, suddenly rose to his feet and exclaimed, "That's it! That's the brown marking on the dog's left shoulder. It's shaped like a leaf from a hickory tree. I'm trying to figure out what it reminded me of. A hickory leaf, of course. Dad, if that dog's name is Hickory, you don't suppose—" "What? That we were just visited by the ghosts of Mason Hopkins and Hickory?" His father scoffed and shook his head. "Don't be ridiculous." For days, Craig couldn't stop thinking about the encounter with the man and his dog. Leonard tried to set his son straight. "Look, Craig, that man told a tall tale, okay? There are no such things as ghosts. He probably made up the whole story about the murder. But what about the bone the dog was carrying? You said it was human." "Yes, it definitely was human, but as I told you before, it probably came from an old grave. Isn't there some way we could find out if there really was a murder back then?" Well, I suppose we could look at back issues of the local newspaper and see what's written about it. That's if it ever happened. The next day they went to the library to scan microfilm of old issues of the newspaper. The man told us that Strum was arrested a couple of months after the murder, which supposedly took place sometime after July 4th, 1938, said Leonard. So let's start with the September issues. They loaded the microfilm machines and stared, frame by frame, at the screen. They read about the army of a German madman named Hitler invading the country of Austria, a civil war raging in Spain, Congress passing a law banning child labor, and the New York Yankees whipping the Chicago Cubs in the 4 straight games to win the World Series. As fatigue set in, Craig and his father cast their eyes upon the front page of October 25, 1938 issue. The headline read, "Man confesses to murder. Dog finds bones of victim missing for 3 months." Exactly as the man in the woods had told them, the story that said that Strum Woodward had been arrested for the murder of Mason Hopkins after Mason's dog Hickory led authorities to the victim's bones. "It's true," said Leonard. "It's all true." "And look," Craig said excitedly. "The story says Mason and the dog were killed July 16th. Remember what the man said to us about the ghosts of Mason and Hickory? That they appeared near the pond on the anniversary of their death. We were there the last 2 years on my birthday, July 16th. Son, all that means is the man we met telling the truth about the murder, but there's no proof of any ghosts. This guy probably gets his kicks by roaming the area telling people the story. Let's read on. The article continues on the next page." Leonard advanced the microfilm. What both of them saw on the page 2 left them limp and speechless. Beside the story was a photo with a caption that read, "Murder victim Mason Hopkins and his faithful dog Hickory, taken 12 days before his murder." Above the caption was a picture of the very same man who had twice visited Craig and his father at their campsite, and by his side, in the photo, was a brown and white hound dog with a distinctive brown spot on his left shoulder shaped exactly like a leaf from a hickory tree. Ooh, that was kind of a long one. I was trying to speed it up a little bit since my phone doesn't like to upload long videos. So now I'm going to try to do the hound dog and see if we can kind of discuss what we heard that man telling them and it being a actual ghost telling the story. Now that's a kind of twist, isn't it? That you have the actual ghost telling its own ghost story. kind of odd. And it makes some long ears here, long floppy ears. Okay. And they always have like droopy eyes, don't they? So we'll try to make them a little droopy. Try to make him look like he's a little bit sad because his owner's no longer with him. Even though he gets to haunt that pond area on the anniversary of both of their deaths. So he still gets to be with his master in a way. That's pretty different. I've never really ever heard of a ghost telling their own story. That is kind of unique, and I can see why the father and the son kind of couldn't believe that would have actually been the man, the victim, and his dog. But, I guess stranger things have happened. I don't know how I would react. I'd be like shocked, and I would have thought what the dad thought, that some guy was just trying to get the best of the campers that come around by like trying to scare them. into thinking that, you know, that they were actually the the ghost couple. But man, that would just freak me out. I think if that would, I don't know. I don't know. I just can't. I can't imagine though that the ghost would have a full-fledged conversation now, answering their questions and talking to them. I don't know. I really don't understand how that come about. But yeah, either way, um, I don't know. It just that baffles me because I don't know of any ghosts that could just conversate with you in that way. If you hear something, it's my little cat Pixie. Sometimes she doesn't like when my phone's on and it's making noise, and she lets you know it. But she's just talking, right? She's our talker, so you might hear her talking. I really don't know how to make his mouth, but let's see. That's the underside of his mouth. Okay, we'll just go on to have him sit. I should have looked up what a hickory tree leaf looked like. So you're going to have to bear with me because I'm not going to be doing an exact hickory leaf, but I will try to do some kind of leaf design on his left shoulder, only because it's stating that that's how he got his name. That was I really think that's a really faithful dog. Actually got justice for them both by actually getting his master's bones. I gotta erase this a little bit here. Getting his master's bones out of the pond and being able to get the attention of the townsfolk. Okay, now this is going to be where the leaf is, because that's going to be the left part. Oop. I got my new table. I haven't even told you guys, but yeah, this is my old table. But I think I forgot to put the brakes on these wheels. So I just bumped it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go for a ride. But at least this is a really nice table. It hasn't, I don't know if you've noticed that it hasn't been really moving as much. That's a plus. Big plus. Now I'm going to try to do his back legs here. And I don't even know if this is a coonhound, but this is a hound dog. So we're going with that too. So sorry on that. It's been a while since I've done any of these stories. I've just had so much to do. We had a quick do our plants, get our plants. We did them earlier this year. We did the whole planting the seeds, and we have this little makeshift I shouldn't say makeshift, it's actually a little greenhouse thing that we can put our plants in, and got a pretty good head start this year. So the plants are looking good. We had to remove them from the greenhouse and put them in the ground out there. We don't have that much room out there, but still it's I think it's going to be pretty good turnout this year. Last year I had cucumbers in. They just did not want to come in. And I know the year before I had some, and man, those boogers, they were never ending. I was giving them away because I had so many. That's not a very good human bone, but there's a bone there nonetheless. And here's the hound dog with his master's bone. He's leaving it for the police to find his master where he's buried. And I'm not going to draw Mason. I'm just going to stick the dog because the dog is the kind of hero in this story, and it's about haunted pets. So yes, so here's our hound dog. I should have made his ears just a little bit longer, extending them a little bit longer, because they do have some wicked looking. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, and I was going to do this, so I'm just going to do this is going to be the mark on his shoulder. And I have no idea if this is a hickory leaf or not, but there's his mark. Now I'm going to zoom you in for a few seconds so you can see this a little bit better. There he is. There's the hound dog with his big long ears, the hickory leaf, the human bone, and all the way down to his tail. So yeah, that will be Hickory, my faithful dog. Okay, thank you so much for stopping by, listening to the story, and watching me try to sketch our faithful companion to Mason. And may they both rest in peace now that they've had justice, even though they seem to be visiting the same place, but they don't seem to be restless ghosts. They just seem to be ones who just revisit their place of demise. Thank you so much. Please give me a thumbs up. Let me zoom you out. My phone lets me. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the story, if you want to comment on it, if you want to try to do these with me, that would be great. I'd like to see some tries at these sketches. And I shall see all of you, hopefully, in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe and share, too. But I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.